What's good, folks? It's Donald King again. How y'all doing out there tonight? Yo, I'm actually going to start trying to schedule when I do these. So right now, tentatively, I'm looking at doing podcasts every Monday and Wednesday at about 6 p.m. or so on Eastern time. But yeah, my homeboy hit me up today with a really good question pertaining to the subject of narcissism and cowardice. And I wanted to actually unpack it so that there's no confusion on the point. I talk about narcissism a lot these days, and see, I'm not the only person who talks about narcissism a lot. It's a buzzword, and it's sort of a scapegoat people use to justify dismissing other individuals who disagree with their inner story. Okay? So most people, when they accuse others of being narcissistic, it's mostly to do with someone saying, hey, you're arrogant for not yielding to my authority, right? That's how it generally goes. Most people are accused of being narcissists, or ironically, narcissists accuse other people of being narcissistic for not yielding to their perceived authority. That's the way that it works. So I wanted to give a sort of mechanical breakdown of what narcissism is and how it works and how it functions, because even the way that it's approached conventionally, according to what I see through this perspective that's been afforded to me, is kind of wrong. So, let's really get into it. So, narcissism, what is it? It's actually a combination of a couple of different things. First of all, narcissism is an addiction to self-idealizing, and/or it's an addiction to the identity. Okay? Narcissism is most certainly an addiction. It's an addiction. It's an addiction to enhancing one's perception of authority. All right? So, and I know I could have said that a little bit better, but we're going to break that down. Narcissism is the addiction to one's own sense of potency. So, a narcissist is a person who goes around in a sort of an aggressive state always, because they're deathly afraid of anything coming along and threatening their inner story, their internal narrative. The internal narrative is the collection of meanings, stories, symbols, beliefs, habits, practices, and relationships and sociological effects that people collect throughout the course of their lives and attempt to self-actualize through. In essence, the identity and/or the internal narrative is the story the person tells themselves about the world around them and their place and value within it. Okay? So narcissism is basically, it's an addiction to that story. It's getting high off of that story. It's getting high off the idea of feeling good and high off the idea of feeling deserving, and subsequently, I guess, entitled to consume. This is all mechanical. It doesn't have anything to do with anyone's feelings or beliefs about it. This is how the system of idealism, or the mode of idealism, operates in parasitic/viral entities. These entities, they're fundamentally divorced from reality, and as such, they run on inner stories and networks of stories that are not necessarily connected to reality as a system. So why is it important to understand this? All right. Well, see, when you're a narcissist, you run around in a perpetual state of aggression. You run around in a perpetual state of competitiveness. Competition and aggression, they're mutually inclusive. Competition. What is competition? Competition is, it's an effort to compete against someone, is basically making an effort to subdue them, prevail over them, and/or dominate them. When you compete against someone, what you're trying to do is dominate them. That means when you come to someone with competition, you necessarily come to them with aggression. When you come to someone trying to compete against them, you come to them with aggression. When you're trying to subdue someone, when you're trying to subjugate someone to you and your inner story and make them recognize and prostrate themselves before and yield to or recognize your own sense of potency from within your internal narrative, you're narcissistic. There are lots of problems with being narcissistic. I mean, first of all, when you're a narcissist, you live in the internal narrative, and as such, you're sort of psychotic all the time. Okay? You're easily triggered. You're volatile. You don't process information and reality well. You're very easily triggered. Okay? The reason why being a narcissist makes you triggered is you have to understand what getting triggered is and or what cognitive dissonance is. Cognitive dissonance is what a person experiences. It's that jolting pain a person experiences whenever something threatens their identity and or the symbols and stories and meanings they've internalized and seek to self-actualize through. All right, so cognitive dissonance is when you come across something or someone that doesn't verify you, that doesn't verify your potency and your sense of authority and rightness. It's all mechanical. It's all mechanical. See, one of the biggest problems with being a narcissist is that, well, withdrawal, and I'm sorry, forgive me, I said that out of order. Cognitive dissonance is instant. It's instant withdrawal. It's a very potent, impactful type of withdrawal. So if narcissism is an addiction, the very second something comes along and interrupts the narcissist's internal narrative or their inner story, they experience this soul-crushing withdrawal phase immediately. Immediately. And then, even worse than that, they go around trying to capture authority from everyone. They go around trying to compete against people and dominate people because they're addicted to this idea of amassing power and or amassing authority, and in so elevating the value and potency of their inner story. I'm reading principles here. I'm sure that I could say this a bit more succinctly, but I'm just describing how it fits and functions together mechanically, folks. So, we have this really interesting phenomenon wherein people assume that they are good. At the end of the day, the majority of the people who you interact with, they're going to be narcissistic. Narcissists believe that they are inherently good. They believe that they're inherently smart. They believe that they're inherently imbued with talents and attributes and qualifications that have absolutely nothing to do with what they're capable of producing in reality. A narcissist, you don't have to be attractive to think that you're beautiful if you're narcissistic. You don't have to be intelligent. You don't have to even be able to process information and reality well in order to assume you're brilliant if you're narcissistic. Narcissism has you or will have you believing that you're better than you really are. That's what it does. The socialization process, it trains us to be narcissistic. It trains us to assume that we are right and that others are wrong. It trains us to assume that everything must agree with what we source back to authority, and that anyone who violates the authorities we subscribe to, or more accurately, our own authority by proxy of the authorities we subscribe to, must be wrong. This is how it works mechanically. Again, it's an addiction. Now, the reason why I want to explain that it's an addiction, that's just one part of it. It's also a condition. So in I guess in conventional medicine, they or in modern science, they try to explain, especially in cognitive science, they try to explain narcissism as being a sort of a mental disease or whatnot. And I may be often using that language there, but it's not really a disease so much as it is a condition or a disorder. You see, narcissism, it's practiced. It's practiced. It's not a disease in the sense that it's more akin to like tennis elbow. Okay? When you use the mind improperly, and you run primarily on beliefs, you run on the inner story as opposed to processing information and reality in real time, it's akin to like hammering something over and over again without properly engaging the grip and using the muscles in the forearm to stabilize the wrist. After a while, you develop something called tennis elbow or tinnitus. Okay, so improperly using the mind is tantamount to improperly using the arm, in that after a while, when you're not engaging it properly, you develop a condition. So narcissism is like, when you don't practice thinking, when you don't practice reasoning, and when you don't practice being honest, you're not engaging the mind properly, and it makes you prone to experiencing cognitive dissonance and or getting triggered over and over again. Something comes along that doesn't verify your inner story, and you have to lash out. You have to blow up and correct someone and try to make them become consistent with your feelings and beliefs. That's narcissism. This is how it works mechanically. So how do we get out of narcissism? Like in the same way, like how do you get rid of tennis elbow? Well, first of all, you have to give the arm a rest a little bit. And then you have to learn how to strengthen the muscles in the forearm, and you have to strengthen your grip, and you have to learn how to use your arm properly, and then the condition goes away. It's the same way it works with the mind. You actually have to learn how to engage the dynamic thought process and stop relying on formulas and beliefs and groups and trends to do all the thinking for you. You have to learn how to be honest. You have to learn how to be honest. Honesty is the individual's will and effort to recognize and sync up with reality. Truth is simply what's consistent with reality. If you're focusing on trying to understand what is in reality and what exists and can be measured independent from your inner story, then you're engaging your mind. But if you just let everything do the thinking for you, if you let your feelings do the thinking for you, if you let your beliefs do the thinking for you, if you let authorities do the thinking for you, if you let credentials do the thinking for you, then something comes along that doesn't agree with what you take on authority, and all of a sudden you're triggered. All of a sudden you're triggered. You're mad. No, you said something wrong. It doesn't agree with me. You need to look at this and you need to read that and you need to... It's too much. It's too much. We're trained to be narcissists. In the socialization process, when we go to school and we go to our religious ceremonies and when we go to like even banks and all these other things, when you go to institutions, when you're institutionalized, you are taught to be right and to fear being wrong. You're taught to acquire money and fear being without. You're taught to get the right answer and to fear being wrong. You're taught to regurgitate your religious ethics and to scream, "Go team!" And then anyone who isn't like you, they have to be evil, right? They have to be wrong so that you can deserve your reward, so that you're entitled to be rewarded, and so that others who don't agree with you must be punished. You're trained to be a narcissist. You're trained to think that it is your inherent right to speak over people, to assume that everyone who doesn't agree with you must be wrong and that you are the judge who must correct them. Highly narcissistic. Highly narcissistic. Well, we got some interlocutors down here. Let me see. It's Brother Ruben. Rube! What's good with you, boy? Let me see. I am being a mentor lately, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I view him as Prince Zuko and me, Iroh. Okay, cool. I'm going to check him out in a little bit once we're done with the live stream. You wrote, I neglect to provide you with further context as we spoke for hours. If you need more context, please ask for it and I will give it. Okay, excellent. It's like, yeah, when we politic and parlay a little bit later, we can definitely get into that. Yeah, I would love to know what's going on with that. Now, here's the thing. I want to get back to this subject of narcissism because, you see, I'm always talking about a narcissist is doing this and a narcissist is doing that. A narcissist and an ideologue, they're one and the same. You can't be an ideologue without being a narcissist, and you can't be a narcissist without being an ideologue. An ideologue is a person who runs on the inner story. It's a person who's not synced up with reality. If you're not paying attention to what's going on around you and you're only invested in you and how you're affected by things and what's happening that only matters to you and just beyond your immediate realm of influence, you're narcissistic and you're an ideologue. It's the way it works. So, have you ever been driving down the street and you see two people racing and weaving in and out of traffic and doing all this crazy shit, putting everybody in danger because they're lost in their inner story, not paying attention to what's happening in reality around them? How many times have you seen that exact same scenario play out? How many times? How many times have you watched, like, you see these movies where somebody goes around and they're just, like, you'll see a lone wolf movie and you see this dude go around and he's just murdering all these people who, in his inner story, they're all evil, they're all bad guys, and he kills them all. The impact he makes in reality, though, it's very different. It's very different than what's happening in his inner story. In everyone's inner story, they're always the good guy. In everyone's inner story, they're always the good guy. They're good. Everyone who doesn't agree with them and who isn't like them is bad and must be vanquished, killed, muted, censored. This raises the question of what to do to reverse narcissism. How do you stop it in the same way that you stop tennis elbow? All right. This goes back to something that the OG Jesus broke down. He said, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Only way to know truth is through honesty. You practice honesty, and that's how you start reversing narcissism. You see, in the narcissist mind, everything is a fucking competition. It's all a competition. You can't love someone without trying to compete against them. You can't encounter someone without trying to compete against them because everything is seen through a lens of authority. Everything is seen through a lens of hierarchy. I'm supposed to be at the top and everyone is supposed to be beneath me. That's how the narcissist thinks. And then those who they look up to, they only look up to them until they become empowered to the level that those they perceive above them are on. And then all of a sudden, they become direct competition and they try to subdue them as well. Subdue. Narcissism. You'd start breaking narcissism down with honesty. So for instance, there's a lot of people who struggle with things like fidelity, right? It's a lot of people who struggle with things like sexuality. It's a lot of people who struggle. They have all these conflicting like messages and feelings and beliefs that they never actually properly sort out. So it gets them into all sorts of shit in reality. They get into a lot of really messed up situations because they never take time to actually be honest with themselves. I see lots of beautiful women all the time, right? And I mention this because when I see a beautiful woman, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go up to her and I'm going to tell her she's beautiful. I'm going to tell her she's gorgeous. Why? Because if I'm not honest and I let the knowledge seep down into my inner story, I know that my inner story is going to start changing it and morphing it into something that makes me want to acquire her and lord it over her. Right? I sit down here and I'm like, man, it's like, man, she is fine as fuck. God damn. Ooh. And then once it gets down into my inner story, man, I want her so bad. Man, if we were together, we would do this, that, and that. Something that started off as simple admiration gets down into the inner story and gets mutated and transformed into something that's completely divorced from what I want in reality. So I'll go over to her and I'm like, you are beautiful. You are stunning. Wow. Good deal. And then guess what? I no longer have this desire, this urge to fucking like lock her down and subdue her. I don't think my pole needs to go in her holes. Why? Because I was honest. In the same way, I'm not into dudes, but if I see a dude who's attractive and I know that he has females, or maybe he doesn't even like females, if he's just an attractive person, I'm like, man, you're a good looking guy, man. You're a good looking dude, bro. Props. Why do I do that? So that that knowledge of what I'm witnessing doesn't seep down into my inner story and start mutating into something different. I don't want to say, oh man, he thinks he's all that. He thinks he's so great. I hate light-skinned guys or dark-skinned guys. He thinks he's so good because he's tall. Fuck that. It's stupid. If I'm just honest on the front end, the knowledge doesn't seep down into my inner story and mutate into something that it's not supposed to be. Honesty sets you free. The more you practice honesty, is the more you free up mind space. The more you free up mind space is the smarter you are and the quicker your brain functions. You practice honesty first. A lot of people, they see me perform in the way that I do. You know, they see that I make sense. And regardless of whether or not you believe I'm an avatar, I think it'd be I would say it like this, and I say this humbly. It'd be pretty hard to make a case that my mind doesn't consume, organize, process, and output information, ideas, and expressions cleanly and efficiently in real time. My mind works exceptionally well. A lot of times people take issue with that. Oh, he thinks he's so great. Oh, you're so arrogant. You need to be humbled. All that extra shit. It's too much. Because they can't just be honest with themselves about the fact that my mind processes information well. They have to create this inner story. This knowledge of what they witnessed me doing seeps down into their inner story, and their inner story mutates it into this thing. You know, man, you know how many people like inbox me and try and yell and argue with me? Try to humble me? All because they can't be honest with themselves about the fact that I make sense. That's narcissism. Narcissism is me first. Narcissism is me above everything. Narcissism is, I have to protect this inner story at all costs because I have to get high off my own supply. It's taking a billion selfies and just looking at and admiring yourself all the goddamn time, and then being scared of anyone and anything that comes along who threatens or undermines how you want to see yourself. That instant cognitive dissonance, that instant backlash, that instant withdrawal, that it's brutal. It's brutal. They don't verify me. You can't have fruitful relationships. You can't have fruitful friendships. Everything has to be a contest to edify you when you're a narcissist. What is anthropocentrism? Anthropocentrism is the view and belief that humans are at the center of everything. It's the view and belief that where does geocentrism come from? What is geocentrism? The view and belief that Earth is at the center of the universe. Everything goes back to this proclivity to prioritize self and the idea of self ahead of and over everything. It makes you psychotic. When you go around thinking that you need to drown out everything that doesn't verify you, edify how fucking awesome you are, you become a raging lunatic. So, first of all, honesty. That's how you start reversing the process of narcissism. Or not the process, but the condition of narcissism. And more importantly, added to that, better yet, you have to practice reasoning. You have to practice consuming information and ideas that don't agree with you. You have to sit there and you actually have to pore through things that don't agree with you and do the work, do the math of seeing what's most consistent with reality. Everything isn't going to validate your internal narrative. It's a lot of shit that's going to invalidate your feelings and beliefs. And you got to be brave enough to look that stuff up and down, see where and how what you feel and believe isn't in sync with reality. You have to practice doing that. And I say the third thing that you have to practice doing is, you have to practice calming down. You have to practice calming down. We're going to try and wrap this up before too long because, again, I'm trying to keep these kind of short, at least to a half hour or so. Sometimes they run over a little. But y'all know that y'all can follow me on social media. I'm out here on Facebook. I'm out here on Instagram. I'm not that big. I got a Twitter account, but I'm not big on Twitter yet. I don't know why. I just, I don't. That's real trendy. I don't know. But anyway, I'm also on YouTube and I'm on Medium. Also, if you want to join the Patreon family, you can always support me at Avatar Cycle, XIII. That's all one word. And then you can always throw some love if you take anything away from any of these things that I put out on Cash App. Hit your boy up and whatnot. The main point that I want to drive home here is that narcissism is practiced. It's an addiction. And the more you get high off the idea of yourself, the more you practice self-idealizing, the more you practice taking pictures of yourself and looking in the mirror and all this other shit, the more you practice perceiving yourself as being superior to other people, is the worse your narcissism is going to get. The more narcissistic you become is the more easily triggered you become. The more easily triggered you become is the less efficiently you can process information. It gets to a point where, like, I don't know if you guys ever check out any of my these epic battles that happen on my wall, but you have people who just bark and they try to force their inner story over top of what I'm saying over and over again because they can't understand what the hell I'm talking about. Everything is, I must fight, I must beat him, I must compete, I must dominate him so as to protect me and to enhance me. You gotta learn how to calm down, man. Because, in the situation that you're presently in, you're trying to bring your narcissism to reality itself. Again, reality is a living, sentient, and self-aware system. It has nothing to do with the contracts and agreements humans have drawn up between themselves, and certainly nothing to do with your inner story. Right now, humanity is violating against the system of reality, and reality is the perfect accountant. Every single thing you do to negatively impact reality, be it within the throes of society or against the system itself, counts against you. You need to get rid of narcissism so that you can understand and sync up with reality, because you're in debt to a system that oh my God, the consequences are, whew. And again, I'm describing what I see. Like, there's nothing that humans know. I don't even have a frame of reference to describe to you exactly how bad aggressing against this system, how bad it's going to be for you on the back end if you don't turn it around. There's nothing for me to compare it to around here. Everything that I do is such a pale comparison. It's bad. When you aggress against the system and you do it out of vanity, you do it out of narcissism, the system doesn't care what you feel or believe. It doesn't care who told you what or what story you were going on when you decided to aggress against the system. You will pay the full cost plus interest. The interest alone is more than you. The interest that comes along with having to do the system, having to do extra work to offset the negative impacts you've made, the interest alone is too much for you to bear. I'm just giving it to you straight, dog. Don't practice vanity. Get away from tribalism. Separate yourself from people and things that reinforce and exacerbate the inner story. You practice, just like you practice smoking meth. I don't know how they do it. I've never smoked meth. But just like you would practice smoking meth, you practice narcissism. It's an addiction. And the more you indulge it, it's the worse shit gets for you. That much I can promise you. Anywho, I have run over nearly 3 minutes, so we're going to wrap this up here. Guys, you already know what I want you to do. I want you to calm down. I want you to be cool and tranquil like water. Cool and tranquil like water. I'm an Aquarius. Ironically, I'm the water bearer, even though I'm an air sign. I don't get into the zodiac like that, but how a lot of that shit correlates to my life path it's weird. I'm still sorting that all out myself. Yeah. So I really got to work on getting my transitions a little bit. My transitions, they just be like everywhere. It's like I'm kind of messy with that. So I thought I had them organized. I definitely do better than that. Anyway, I'm tired. I look tired, man. I look old right now. I'm wondering if I should dye my beard. It's like, should I just leave the grays in, or I don't know. I'll be talking. Anyway, y'all are my people. I love you. I appreciate you, and I'm hoping that I was really looking forward to getting a little bit more dialogue. But then again, this was impromptu, and I wanted to sort of just unpack narcissism as a phenomenon. Narcissism, ultimately, and this is one point I forgot to mention, narcissism, it lends itself to cowardice. Cowardice is a fear of reality. It's being afraid to face reality. When you're a passive coward, you barricade yourself in the inner story and or in a network of inner stories, like in an echo chamber. And when you're an aggressive cowardice, you go around and try and take your fears and insecurities out on weaker people in efforts to capture a false sense of power from them. So narcissism, it leads to cowardice. Cowardice is hated by reality. Reality hates cowardice with a passion. When the entity that I'm hosting, when it perceives cowardice, when it witnesses cowardice, it lights a flame in me like it can't wait to be separate of this body, because man, whoo, I promise y'all, you don't want to be on the receiving end of what's coming to Those who are given to corruption, you do not want to be in the receiving end of that. I swear to God, I'm just describing what I see. I swear to you, you don't want that heat. It's bad. It's bad. There are things that are worse far worse in existence than pain. Far worse. Pain is like the worst thing that humans have in flesh. There are far worse things in life than pain. And whew, man, I'd calm down if I were y'all. So I'm trying to help you do. Learn how to calm down. Stop being aggressive. Yo, I'm signing off. I appreciate y'all. Much love to you. Y'all have yourselves a wonderful night. All right, peace.